on the ground, that's bright shade, and that's plenty for some of the Cupias, especially the Mexican heather. This particular one, though, like I say, wants a little bit more sun. This is another neat plant that a lot of people don't know about. They call it Euryops, E-U-R-Y-O-P-S, also known as African shrub daisy. And beautiful little plant, lots and lots of yellow flowers, grows about 3 feet in height, prefers a sunny area. Again, what's one of the nice things about this? The deer don't usually touch it. And I get so many questions about deer, I think that's worth pointing out. There is a gray leaf form of this, and once again, when you're getting this, and it'll be the only variety we have, but this is a very much improved plant. The old-fashioned green Euryops would bloom and then it'd be without blooms for a while, then it'd bloom a little bit more, then it'd be without flowers. This is a newer variety they call Sunshine, and that one will stay in bloom almost constantly, pretty much throughout the warm season. Again, a good trouble-free plant, virtually never see an insect of any sort on it, about 3 feet tall. Dependably perennial. It gets a little bit woody after about 3 or 4 years. You can cut it back if you like, but realistically, for a few dollars, if you've gotten 3 years of growth out of it and you like it, pull it up and plant a fresh one. You'll be happier with it. But again, a good perennial for lots of different uses. This again is still another one that I think is very underused, Mexican oregano. I don't know if it has culinary uses. Any of you cooks know? Do you cook with this?
I used to. I got too much shade now.
Got too much shade. But that didn't have anything to do with the cooking. That just had to do with the place. Okay.
But it's not as good as the Greek.
Or probably as the Italian. But anyway, it does have some culinary use. But it is, again, it makes a fairly big plant that's going to get up in the neighborhood probably of 2 feet in height. And is, much as you'd think it wouldn't happen with that little plant, it's going to make a clump. It's like this big around. But again, especially in the spring, you will have hundreds at least of flowers on it. They're all the same color, all sort of a medium to a light to medium pink color. But again, with that strong aroma, it's just almost totally resistant to all insect problems. And
Hummingbirds like them?
It likes bright light, lots of sun.
Hummingbirds?
Hummingbirds like it very much. Deer don't. Bugs don't. But hummingbirds and butterflies seem to be pretty well attracted to it. But deer leave it alone. It's anything with a strong aroma to it, the deer are probably going to leave alone. It's called Mexican oregano. One other thing I'll tell you about deer is that a lot of plants, probably the great majority of plants that are commercially grown these days are grown with commercial fertilizers, which tend to put a lot of soft vegetative growth on things. Unfortunately, a lot of our growers, we just can't find anybody that's all organic in the growing end of it. And plants that are normally deer resistant, when you first get them, when you first plant them, may not be as deer resistant because that soft succulent growth hasn't developed all the aroma, hasn't developed all of those qualities. But hopefully in your garden it'll be on an organic program after it's grown for just a little while. It will be a whole lot more deer resistant than than some of them are to begin with. But again, that's one nice thing about that particular plant. Oh, lantanas. Again, everybody that has sun should have at least some lantanas in the landscape. The big breakthrough in development of lantana varieties came with this plant, which is they call New Gold. Called it new because it did something different. Now, 3 things about lantana. They like lots of sun, lots of fertilizer, and they like plenty of water. If you don't water them, they will survive, but they won't bloom well. If you don't fertilize them, they will survive, but they won't bloom well. So while you're going to read about what a good xeriscape this plant is, what a good xeriscape plant, if you really want the flowers, be prepared to water it and to fertilize it, because it will survive drought, but it's not going to look like you want it to. It's not going to be that solid mass of flowers. Now the big breakthrough about this plant is that the old-fashioned lantanas would have a period of making flowers, and then they'd make those seeds, those kind of purplish seeds. And sometimes they'd bloom for a month, and then it'd be 3 months of seed. Then you get a month of bloom, then you get 3 months of seed. And they're not really very attractive when they're not in flower. The New Gold was the first of many varieties that makes almost no seed. It just doesn't set seed, and because it doesn't make seed, it flowers almost constantly. If you're feeding and watering this plant, you should have blooms from this time of year all the way up until freezing weather in the fall. They should be pretty much a solid mass of flowers. One other reason that I will tell you about this plant, not to let it get stressed, especially drought stressed, is that this is one that will get a nasty little insect on it called a lace bug. And when you get that, the flower buds don't open well. The leaves tend to become sort of a mottledy white and gray and green color. And like I say, it usually hits plants that are stressed. If you're keeping it well fed and watered, probably won't see lace bug. But if you see lace bug, what I tell people do is go ahead and prune it back severely, spray with something like your spinosad, fertilize it heavily, and it'll come back out. But if you can avoid letting it get too stressed to begin with, it'll give you almost totally trouble-free results.
Yeah, last year that happened to a couple of my bushes. And I did call you and just cut them down, like you said, within about 2 or 3 weeks. Flowers were back.
Yep. They're great. Another one of the bushy lantanas, new this year, called Anne Marie.
Love it.
And if you're looking for a really pretty lantana, it's just these things, they're bunches of new ones, seem to come out every year or two. And Anne Marie is just one of my favorite new ones. And they just bloom and bloom and bloom. And once again, they make virtually no seeds, so they just almost always have flowers on them.
Are there 2 different colors?
Upright, I'm sorry?
Are there 2 different colors of flowers? The yellow and the
No, they
red?
open and they change colors. They open. Here's some that are just opening, almost pure yellow. As they start to mature, they have more of a reddish kind of orangey cast to them. And then when they're fully matured, they're that color. I guess one of the other plants we should have brought in here is one they call Brunfelsia. They call it yesterday, today, and tomorrow, because it changed colors was over 3 days from white to lavender to almost dark purple.
What was that?
That's a plant called Brunfelsia, and it's probably on your list. We can talk about it later if you want. But we could call this plant yesterday, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, the day after, because it just keeps changing colors and the blooms do last for quite a long time. Yes.
Would you plant that in the backyard with dogs?
Well, I'm sorry?
Would you plant that in the backyard with dogs?
Would depend on what kind of dogs. Lantanas are somewhat toxic,
Labs.
and labs. They're not going to eat it, but they may pull it up and play with it.
Yeah.
So if I planted any plant with labs, especially young labs, I'd probably spray a dog repellent on it. Again, the older ones that made seeds, the seeds were somewhat poisonous. I'd be reluctant to put them out around pets. It's unlikely that they would consume enough of that to be a problem, but
Maybe pots.
yeah, maybe pots would be good. Now, in general, with lantanas, I should tell you that there are 2 really different types of lantanas. These 2 that I'm showing you, along with the red spread, with the radiation, with lots of different colors, are what we would call mounding types of lantana. And if properly fed and watered, they're going to be about 3 feet high and about 3 feet across in a solid mass of flowers. There is a whole different group of lantanas that we call trailing lantanas. And they're mainly going to be 3 different colors. They're going to be pure white, they're going to be pure lavender, or they're going to be lavender with a white eye. They're just derived from 2 different species of lantana. The mounding types all love full sun. The mounding types freeze back to the ground most winters. And the mounding types pretty much all bloom heavily throughout the warm months, through the summer months. The trailing types will grow in partial shade and grow very well in partial shade or in full sun. They tend to bloom very heavily in the spring, very heavily in the fall, and just kind of scatter flowers through the summer months. So if summer color is important to you, plant the mounding types. If you want something that's going to be in gorgeous bloom in February, if we haven't had a real cold winter, because they don't usually freeze back unless it gets real cold, or if you want just a real show of color in November, even into December, then the trailing types may be good choices for you. Remember, they don't come in as many different colors. But they can make, again, a gorgeous ground cover. Once again, had a friend that planted an area front yard about as wide as this part of the building and probably 50 feet long. And I went by there one time, and there literally were cars stopped and people getting out and taking pictures of it. It was so showy. That's what I always say, you know, you can measure the success of those plantings by the number of tire marks on the curb. There were people run off the road trying to see what it was. But lantanas are